how long have you been carving by hand? I came here in 2018 in November, just probably at the lowest part of my life. And one of my coworkers suggested to me, she goes, "You need to go to the carousel." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You need to go to the carousel." I go, and her name's Judy, and I'm like, "Judy, I don't need to go ride a wooden horse." You know? And she's like, "No, you need to go carve." I called Brian, who's the operations manager. We get to talking, and Brian says, "I remember clearly the day you called me and said you would like to come down and talk about carving, and I told you to come on down, and you said, 'I'll be there in 20 minutes. They put a chisel in my hand, and I'm like, "Oh, this will be interesting." You know, and $300 or $400 later, you see my bag of chisels over there, and it's fun.
My wife was interested in Santa carvings and stuff, and we went to a couple carving shows, and we walked by here one day, and Bill Mills was sitting in here, and it was his job to try to get some carvers for the new animals. And so he says, "Come on in if you're interested," and he says, "I'll give you your first tool." And so he handed me a Band-Aid. And I still got that in my pocket. I didn't use that one. I've used a lot of others. And then we each got a leg of an elephant. That was the first one. Each animal, we take chips off there. Like this one's from the last three they're working on right now, the hummingbird, the beaver, and the shark. So it's a good educational thing, because tell their parents or their teacher to teach them about DNA and what it is and everything. So most of them want to look and see if it's edible. We've had some kids that come in here every week to watch an animal.
I had some friends that had what's called a racing quarter, half Arab, half racing quarter. Name was Tucker. And so I bought him, and I joined the sheriff's posse with him. Yeah, I was a mounted police officer for 12 years, and it was the best detail I ever had. This project was started about 10 years ago by a guy named Bill Mills, who was one of the original carvers here. Way back then, to sponsor a horse was $9,000, $10,000. Bill didn't have $9,000, $10,000, but he had an epiphany about this horse, and he wanted to do it. This wood is not so expensive that you can't afford it, so Bill bought all this wood himself through the mill, took it home, and began carving this in his garage.
This is basswood from the linden tree, and we got linden trees right outside here. Those are linden trees. It's a tight grain wood, so it doesn't have the summer and winter growth so much, and it's still carvable, but it's considered a hardwood. That's what everybody uses now for this type of, the linden tree is basswood. So, and all the horses are carved from that. Most carvings are. I think of Bill a lot because when I'm watching somebody carve or myself, whenever he was teaching us, if we had our tools and our elbows not on the tables, because if you but if you have you can carve little stuff, you know, you can have good. He'd just make everybody stop. His project here, he passed away and it got stored, and the family donated it to us.
That's him the first time I saw him. Head's laying on the table. He's got wooden eyes. That's as far as Bill got with him. All of a sudden, this thing took on a whole new meaning here. Well, COVID hit, mask mandates, this place turned into a ghost town. A year ago, at the end of July, I stopped in to see Brian. I said, "Hey, just, I want to stop by and say hi, and, let you guys know that I'm thinking about you and all that." And Brian says, "Hey, are you still interested in that Pegasus?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You want it back?" And I said, "Yeah." So I call him on the phone. I go, "Hey, Merrill, you want to come down and help me do this, da-da-da-da-da?" He thought about it and said, "Yeah, sure." And here we are. We've had nothing but fun.
It's fun to be back on it. So we'll get it done.
This man has a genius for carving. This is a piece of art. We get to do what we want to do with it. And so that's what we're doing. Hey, Terry. Yeah, we're volunteers. And there's no money involved in it. And it's like somebody, well, why do you do it? Because I can't not do it. It's part of who and what we are.
Well, I'm trying to finish the main, but I'm helping a little bit getting the wings so they're formed in better.
What makes him unique is, first off, there is no other Pegasuses in the whole United States that I know of with full outstretched wings. Nobody knows what a real Pegasus looks like. Carousel horses don't have outstretched wings, and certainly not almost 11-foot outstretched wings. I mean, just the fact that these wings are that big is ambitious. We designed these wings. So what I needed was that right there. You see it takes a bend right here? And right under here is two black walnut pins that I created in my shop that hold this skeleton and this skeleton together.
We dowel everything, and glue and dowel. That's the way all the older horses were made, and that's what we do. So.
When he was first created, he had wooden eyes. And Bill did a fabulous job carving those wooden eyes. But we thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And if you go out on the carousel and you start looking at all the horses and you start looking at their eyes, the eyes just bring them to life. Well, the magic on the carousel has green eyes. And green eyes just, they capture you. The day we put these eyes in, oh my gosh. You know, we said a day, and I don't know, either one of us slept. And right before Merrill pulled the trigger, I go, you know, Merrill, once you pull the trigger, there ain't no going back. This thing fit. Everybody since then has said that, you know, the eyes just brought him to life. Tucker had an unusual nose pattern. As I work on him, I'm going to put pieces of my horse in him, and nobody has to know it. I'll know it. And that's part of that joy of creating something. If you're an artist, do art. Whatever it is. People come through here all the time, and we talk about art all the time. This is a full-size Pegasus. Do you enjoy it? Yeah. Push yourself. Create something that nobody else has. This lady came in and she tells me she's an artist. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I said, well, how do you like him? And she said, well, I really like him, but he needs 2 feathers up in his mane. I said, where? And so she points right in here. And there was a big hole there. And Merrill and I had been talking about how we were going to fill it and what we were going to do and all of that. And I cut this one first. And finally got it to fit where we kind of wanted it. And then we cut out the second one and got it to fit where we wanted it. So we had a pattern. And so then I glued them in place. And they've been there ever since. We do things like this, not for money, but for the fact that it gives people joy and will for years and years and years. It'll spark, some kid will walk in here and see this and go, wow, who knows where he'll go with it. He's not moving, but he looks like he's moving. The mane flows like he's moving. Bill's original idea and inspiration for this comes out of Revelations 19:11. And this actually for Bill represented the horse, the white horse that Christ returns on to fight the final battle of Armageddon. And so Bill's, and I've seen Bill's original drawings, has a cross on this horse's chest. And then the top of the cross we cut to follow the throat latch down. So it's the whole point of that is to make it look like it is actually growing out of his chest, not a pendant, not something hung on him, like it's just naturally growing out of his chest. So we have to make it subtle as we can get it. See, like that little shadow right there? That little shadow is probably a 32nd of an inch deep, but that's all that's required to create a shadow. Like so many things, you start down a trail and it just shows you what it wants you to do. And so this horse is probably half of its own creator. It kind of drives us and tells us what it wants us to do. And we're just being obedient to it. I saw the doors of heaven opened, and he who sat on the white horse, who's named Faithful and True, who righteously judges and makes war on the nations. That's Jesus. That's John's vision. The faithful and true actually refers to Christ, but now it's his name. And so somebody said, well, what are you going to name him? We're going to call him Faithful and True. And everybody goes, that's a great name. Everybody. It has been universal since that moment in time. Everybody comes in here and they're like, well, what's his name? Faithful and True. And they just go, wow. You can see daylight down through this where all these feathers are cut loose. So that gives them even more of that feeling that they're flying. I discovered fairly quickly that God had given me a gift for it. And if you got a gift, you got to use it.
One of the quotes that I live by was from a Japanese artist, and the people were honoring him, and they said, when did you think you did your best work? And he said, by the time I got into my 80s, I had the patience, I had the know-how, and I still had the drive. That's something to live by.
I want people to come in and look at this and be moved by it and be in awe of what they're looking at.